I know how challenging chinuch can be, but I think that the goal of every teacher in Tufshin Peidal in 2024 needs to be to make Torah and Yiddishkeit as appealing and exciting as an NFL draft. We need Torah to be as exciting and as appealing as anything that's being offered on social media, on Netflix, Instagram, YouTube, movies. We need to make Torah as exciting as that.
Welcome to the channel Navigating Chabad. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share, because that helps the algorithm bring it to more people, which changes lives and brings Mashiach. And two disclaimers. First disclaimer that this channel is catered to a Chabad crowd, or at least religiously Jewish. And also disclaimer, this channel is not meant to bash anyone or any organization. We're here to change the world for the better, to improve Chabad, which improves the world, and yeah. So sit back, relax, enjoy, soak in all the goodness. Yeah, now.
So today we have Reb Betzalel Bassman. I'm very excited to finally get to speak with him. So Reb Betzalel, I hear you are the co-founder of Semichas Chabad. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So I think it's been about 3.5, 4 years ago. Your father-in-law, your shver, Rabbi Jacks, I have never met him in person. We probably spent hundreds of hours on the phone. It was right before COVID, so just punked. We never, Bashkach brothers, you never met face to face. I actually learned in Toronto years before he moved there, 15, 20 years ago. I was 4 years in Toronto. So basically, we kind of were introduced actually by my brother-in-law, Avi Weinstein. He somehow knew your father-in-law. So he knew that I was looking to do something for Bottem, learning halocha to spice it up locally in Pittsburgh, and kind of to put something together. And I was basically in the process of looking through all the currently available halacha curriculums out there outside of Lubavitch that are successful, and to adapt them for Lubavitcher communities. And I maybe I'd vetted one or two, and then I met your Bala Mamish when I was just starting to look into this. And we spoke. The first conversation we met was like a 3-hour conversation, and we had to stop just because we had to go to bed at night. But we mamish were. I feel like he's like a Ben Giloy. It's a Talmudic term for we mamish. We had very similar visions, and together we looked at like probably 5 of the most successful halacha curriculums for Balabatim out there. Both of us were interested in halacha. We're teaching halacha, and also had exposure to other communities. And we both were equally on board that we did not want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to take something and improve it. And we found a program called Semichas and Rabbis that I just started maybe a year or two before that. Semichas chaver, SCP, started by a young man in Eretz Yisrael, and it was all over. Initially started in the modern Orthodox community, and together we got on a call, and we convinced him to let us try it out in our communities, our respective communities, him in Toronto and myself in Pittsburgh. And the first semester I remember then was Muktzah, and which could be a bit of a boring topic in halacha, and we essentially wanted to make it interesting. So we said if we can be successful with Semichas chaver and Muktzah, then it would work with all other topics.
Why did you start with Muktzah?
That's what they were, meaning that's what they were up to. They had
the same curriculum as the non-Chabad organizations.
At this point, we're like a year behind them because we take their material and work on it. But at that point, I think they had just done Muktzah the semester before, so we were like 6 months. Every 6 months was a new topic, and we tried it out in our Kehillas, and it was mamish. Like it took off. Like on a good week, I would pull 3 or 4 people to my weekly halacha class, and once I started Semichas chaver, averaged 15 plus each week. And so we saw there was something really, really special here. And it basically, we said we need to bring this to other communities, and we got more Rabonim involved. And Semichas chaver Chabad's now in close to 40 communities and 3 different languages. And we're starting a Chabad house version that's in another 30 Chabad houses. So it's in close to 80 Lubavitcher communities this current semester. We're starting now a women's version as well, but it's all based on that initial launch.
Mm-hmm. The women's version was something that the non-Chabad also already started? Because everything is just based on them just tweaking it?
The women's version actually and the Chabad house version were definitely sponsored and promoted by Rabbi Eliada Goldwicht. Soll sein gesund. We saw the vision together, but the halocha U, which is like the more beginners version, and the women's halocha circle, which were just piloted this semester in 3 communities, that all kind of started with Chabad, and we're hoping eventually to bring it to create a Mishnah Berurah version as well. But for now, the women's halacha circle and halacha U were written for Chabad communities, rewritten for Chabad communities.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But what's unique about Semichas chaver to begin with is that it's essentially a curriculum that's written for a crowd that's Ashkenaz. You part of the presentation to the student to make it engaging is you present the different viewpoints. So every student, even in a regular Semichas chaver class, you start with the psukim, you go through the Gemaras and the basic Rishonim, but then you present the opinion of the Ashkenazim and the Sfardim and the Litvaks. So adding in the Chabad perspective, we emphasize it more, but already to begin with, the curriculum was the full spectrum. So it's really nice for a shliach that lives in middle nowhere. Many shluchim prefer, they're most of their communities Sfardim. So the fact that it's Chabad is helpful for the shliach, but for his community, having the base curriculum, or many shluchim have 30-40% people that follow the Mishnah Berurah or follow other viewpoints. So being able to present the full gamut of the shittas is something that the shluchim found really, really, everyone finds interesting, but for certain communities it's mamish. That's exactly what they need.
Mm-hmm. Can you go more in depth of what exactly it looks like? So you mentioned already that it's not only Chabad, or it's like brings other shittas, other opinions. So that's why it's appealing to so-called non-Chabad people yet. But what else is there unique about it?
Right. So like I said, we did look through a lot of different options, and Semichas chaver had what we felt were the most bells and whistles to make learning Torah interesting. Because I tell this to the teachers, with carefully, because I know how challenging chinuch could be, but I think that the goal of every teacher in Tufshin Pei Daled in 2024 needs to be to make Torah and Yiddishkeit as appealing and exciting as an NFL draft. And I'm not a I don't know anything about sports. My son taught me everything I know, but just that we need Torah to be as exciting and as appealing as anything that's being offered on social media, on Netflix, Instagram, YouTube, movies. We need to make Torah as exciting as that. Obviously, that's an uphill battle. But so Semichas chaver was at least a step in that direction to make Torah as geschmack and as exciting as possible. So the presentation of Semichas chaver, the number one goal is actually not to teach halocha. It's to make an exciting class. And it happens to be the subject matter is halocha. So you really have the perfect blend of the background of the halacha and practical modern applications. And there's a lot of basically the 8 to 10 year curriculum goes through all the halacha Shulchan Aruch, every practical siman in Shulchan Aruch that it's relevant, and you take that boring subject of muktzah, like the sifim that you would skip in Semichas about things that had like I had learned a couple of times and had zero relevance. You mamish bring it to your dining room table, your kitchen, it shows you the halachic thinking from the sources. And so the class itself is super engaging because you're dealing with practical matters. You understand why you do it. You understand the different shittas and viewpoints, and you come away with practical takeaways. There's interesting videos to show different modern shilas, how they're applied. And then once the student leaves the class, so he's mastered the background, practical, then the student's empowered to take the material home to his family. So it's not just you learning there, you then empower them to become the Maggid Shir. You send home each week some fun, entertaining questions to bring to the Shabbos table. I'm not sure if you were sat by your Shver Shabbos table and heard some of the Semichas chaver questions, but there's these like fun, cutesy, modern questions, and you discuss it. And then there's also a weekly, for most of the sugyas, a weekly comic strip to take one of those halachas and bring it to your little kids. So you're really taking the halacha, you're making it entertaining, you're making it intellectually engaging, you're making it practical, and you're bringing it home to the family. And then as well, every 6 months, you have the sipuk of what I feel is a part of learning that many people don't take advantage of, which could be the most geshmaka part of learning, which is chazara. Unfortunately, many yeshivas don't really tap into the geshmak and the importance of chazara. So every 6 months, you review the topics and you master them and you take a test. You pass the test, you get a certificate of accomplishment, and the family sees the tati's like really taking this seriously. So it's an opportunity to master the material, and really know this stuff cold. And people that take Semichas chaver seriously, many of them know the halachas, on a very high level. The percentage of talmidim that go through a Semichas chaver course and say, I wish I had this type of learning in yeshiva, the numbers are very high.
Wow. So I guess there's definitely more, what do you would call it, like areas to be open, more fields to be opened in this. Like you said, you're creating you're planning on creating a women's section, women's field.
We piloted one in 3 communities this semester, and the Mitzvah Shem, the feedback has been so far very strong, and hopefully the next semester we're going to offer it to the other Semichas chaver Rabbis. Right now there's one happening in Pittsburgh, Los Angeles, and Baltimore, and Mitzvah Shem, we'll be able to offer it to the other Semichas chaver Rabbis as well.
Amazing. So you mentioned that this should come to it sounds like everyone should go through this. This shouldn't be limited, why it's interesting why it started off with Bottem. Like everyone deserves to have halacha to be more enjoyable. No?
When I was your age, I did a lot more kvetching about the chinuch system. I'm more careful about that now, because I know how hard teaching is and how hard running a school is. So I'm a lot less judgmental. I know I myself had attempted to teach in a Masifta setting for 3 or 4 years. It's very hard. It takes rock star talent to do it. But I get people reaching out to me from seminaries, from high schools, to create halacha curriculum, and I have ideas, and there's things in the pipeline, and I think it's, to me, it's lower hanging fruit. The reason we started Bottem is because at least in yeshivas you're learning. Over here, Bottem have nothing, so to speak. So to create something for Bottem, it's a good place to start, and it's also once you can get the Bottem engaged, it's an easier problem to solve, let's say.
Right.
I have ideas for schools and yeshivas. I have budgets, and if people are interested in helping out, the projects are waiting for sponsors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who are like the big sponsors, if that's something you're allowed to say?
No, meaning at this point, meaning to do something for schools. So Semichas chaver, kind of, each community pays a little bit of a tuition to join, and we're kind of covering their costs. But to do something for schools is a bigger project, I think. And I Baruch Hashem have my hands full, but I have some ideas. And if there's at the right time, if there's people that want to expedite some of these projects, I have teams of Rabonim that can be put together to work on them. And essentially it's taking material that's already been worked through somewhat and adapting it for Lubavitcher Yeshivas.
Right. So it's a mixture of adapting what there already is outside of Chabad, but there are innovative, specific things that you're adding.
Correct. So again, it would need I don't have a lot of experience creating curriculum for schools. Most of the other things I'm involved with are all adult education. But I think we can learn a lot of what we see and then apply it. But it would need to be piloted and tested, and there's no one of the things that I find very frustrating with, if you want to talk about schools, is that there's a lot of every single teacher seems to want to reinvent the wheel, and teachers are spending so much time doing that I feel the resources are not focused on creative energy. They're focused on creating their own worksheets. And essentially, you're not improving the product for the student. The teacher can come with his own unique, new way to teach whatever it is, Aleph Beis, for the teacher to feel he has his own, material. But at the end of the day, I don't think the Talmud is benefiting for each teacher. And the teachers really get burned out because it takes a lot of time to create your own stuff. And I see that as being one of the biggest burnouts of teachers, to create their own stuff. It's not of the same quality as it would have been if it was some, universal curriculum to teaching. The best way to teach Masechtas Makkos to 8th graders. Like, every teacher has to reinvent the wheel over and over for the last 75 years. It's one of the biggest sources for burnout, and it's one of the biggest reasons why we don't have this amazing, group effort of the top 50 8th grade Rabbis teaching Makkos in the best way possible.
So I didn't stop. What was the problem? The fact that every Rebbe in every year is reinventing? Maybe they're doing
all the energies were focused on perfecting one product that can be used better and better between all the 8th grade Rebbes and all the 9th grade Rebbes, all focus their energies on improving this one method or book or sefer or idea to what's the best way to teach Masechtas Bava Basra to 10th graders. I think that the teachers would be able to benefit from each other's work much more, so much more crossover. And the Talmud would get a better product every year. Masechtas Bava Basra would become more and more appealing and exciting, and we're all working towards this one goal of, imagine if the 15 Lubavitcher Masechtas got together, and I mean they do get together, and it's improved a lot. But imagine if they were all working on, open sourcing all the best way to teach this Taisvis, or to teach, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Instead of each Masifta coming up with their own little workbook to learn Hilchos Sukkos, you'd have the best guy in Lubavitch that can write the best workbook, and the best guy that can, and not just Lubavitch, use the stuff. I tell people, look at what OU has done to the resources for learning Gemara. So to be able to essentially do that for Gemara, Hasidus, and really, sharing across platforms all the best ways to teach everything, I think we'd be light years ahead of where we are now. It's
So
very
that's
hard.
what chaver is doing, no?
Yeah, Semichas is an example. I mean, Kolol Rabonei Chabad, which is another project that I'm working on. But again, all the projects that I'm working on, essentially, it's what I want to do is bring together the people that are the best at their individual areas and bring together all those resources for everyone to gain together. And it's not each person doing their own thing in their own little kehillah, but to bring together the best of what's out there and each person to add what they can do to improve in their specific area of expertise. And for one person, it might be whatever, something small, but it takes some humility on the teacher's part to say, you know what, I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel, and I'm going to use someone else's stuff, but I want my student to have the best of whatever's out there, and I'm going to focus all my creative energy in making the best class I could for the Talmud. And that's very hard. That's super hard. That's as for a teacher, it's that's not an easy thing to do.
What about
when I was a teacher, I didn't do it, and it was a mistake that I made. I spent 60% of my hours preparing these worksheets that I could have stolen from, quote unquote, from someone else, and focused my energy on improving those versus trying to make Betzalel Bassman's best version of Kunstris Mayan to teach my guys. And I just, it was energy that was wasted.
Are you saying that there's a fundamental base that this is the best, and then everyone just tweaks it a little bit to their culture community?
Yeah, and it's very hard because Masiftas and Yeshivas are really competing with each other.
Why?
So it's a business. They each want to get the best kids. They each want to get, there's tuition, there's this, there's that. And you can see it as, if I'm going to share my Kuntrus Mayan with him, what am I gaining? And again, there's a lot of fear. I think fear is what might be blocking some of it. First of all, it's tremendously better today than it was when I was in the system. But I think part of, I'm guessing, again, I'm not in the chinuch, so I don't know. And there's lots of groups that are happening. People are sharing a lot. But I just know firsthand, people that come to me and say, Betzalel, how can I be a better teacher? And I look at what they're doing. They're wasting, they're getting burnt out because they're trying to reinvent the wheel in 50% of cases. Other cases, they're not getting enough sleep. In other cases, they're not getting paid enough. But one of the easily solvable issues is look for the best stuff that's out there, get the best mentors, and don't try to reinvent the wheel.
I have to, go back to what you said. That was a real shocker. You just said that the yeshivas are scared to share their information with other yeshivas, to collaborate with other yeshivas, because then what makes my yeshiva unique? Something like that.
Again, to me, it's a dover pashut that kinasay from Tarba Chachma, and someone puts in 10 years of work to create the best workbook for teaching Hilchos Shabbos, right? And maybe the yeshiva even invested in this guy. So they're going to see it as, this is my stuff. You want to pay me top dollar, okay, I'll share some of it with you, but, you want to keep your competitive edge. It's like anything else. Parnasa is challenging. And yeshiva is a business. You're not yet paying Mesivta tuitions. You know what they charge? And if your Mesivta has something good, I can see a strong argument that we're going to keep this. I don't want to share
I
this with
can't
the
believe
guys
what
in some other city.
I didn't even know that. I mean, I don't know how I went through a Yeshivas in plural, and I didn't notice that, but I hear you. It could be
They
certain
tell you
yeshivas.
they want Morristown's Bottem, and it's of course it's
It's
always like
not local yeshivas, because a local yeshiva, like the ones, at least one that I went to, everyone just goes there because it's the local yeshiva. They're not getting, people are not coming there because, sorry, in my own opinion, because it's a better yeshiva. I mean, everyone just goes there because that's where they live.
again, I could just share from my experience. I was in Chicago, and Chicago had a very good Mesivta. When I was in ninth grade, I wanted to go out of town. I was looking at Brunois. Goes back to Tufshin, the test, the Ches. I was looking at Brunois. I was looking at Toronto. And again, the yeshivas would compete today, and even in Zal's go around and they try to recruit Bachar. My brother-in-law here went from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's opening up a new Zal. They're going around to all the Mesivtas to recruit the best Bacharim for the new Zal. It's I mean, I see that happening all the time. Definitely, everyone's trying to,
I can't believe it.
rightfully so, trying to, make the best yeshiva they could, which I think makes a lot of sense.
You can still have that, like and you can still have that base where everyone is learning in the same style, like for the same way how we're all learning the same Gemara, so we're all learning the same entertaining Gemara through Semichas Chabad, and then each one adds their tweak to it. Still,
I think that takes a certain level of self-confidence and security. Once like the lahavdil, the reason why America can be such a magnanimous, giving country, it's because we're secure. You go to a third world country where everyone's fighting for their next meal. You're not comfortable sharing with others. So the Lubavitcher yeshiva system and the chalal, whatever, we've been maturing, and I think a yeshiva that's established and would be much more comfortable saying, here's what I'm doing best, and here are the best practices, learn and take from me. They'd be much more comfortable doing that for some new yeshiva that's just establishing themselves. So it's most of the Mesivtas in Lubavitch are relatively new from the last 10, 15 years. So this concept that people are going to be open to sharing is Mr. Hashem. It should be, I'm sure it's happening more and more. But the fact that even in the frum world, that every single third grade Rebbe and second grade Mora is trying to reinvent these new projects over and over from scratch, and everyone's trying to do their own thing. You can ask your mother-in-law. I think she's the principal of a school. Everyone's reinventing the wheel. To me, I think that it's such a waste of time and energy. I understand why people do it, but I think pushing back against that and providing resources would save a lot of burnout and would benefit the Talmud at the end of the day.
right. So I would have said that there's no one like someone like you who's like, guys, let's get together and make a baseline for everyone. And now you're telling me that there are people who would push back and say, no, we don't want this. So that's a different story. Like, it's not like there's a lack, there's an ignorance, and you're just filling the lack. There's negativity that's saying, negative, quote unquote, that's pushing back.
It takes an Elon Musk to make Twitter code open source. You need to be very breit, and not everyone's ready for that.
Right. I guess, I mean, we hope that the Rebbe could have been our baseline, and everyone could build off that. But no, it's not. And I'm sure even the Rebbe wants us to come be creative, like like the mitzvah tank, for example. That's something that the Rebbe didn't say to make a mitzvah tank. You have to be creative, and from there, everyone, even with mitzvah tanks, there's different styles, but you have to start. There has to be some type of baseline.
The
Is
Rebbe
there?
was definitely.
Do you think there's hope to get this into yeshivas? Because it sounded like you were saying you were going to get it, you just were lacking the budget. But now, so what's up with that?
It's not my current focus, but I have ideas to bring, to at least in the area of halacha, to create halacha curriculums for seminaries, for high schools, for yeshivas. And I think as we continue to develop more and more, like, for example, with Kolol Rabonei Chabad, that we didn't get to, but the current topic that we're doing now is more for married people. But as we get to other topics, I very much think that if we're going to be creating Rabonim and Lubavitch, the earlier we can start, the better. So if we can already start some of this curriculum, once they're already 19 or 20, and you get already 3 or 4 years in, before they get married, I think it makes it, a lot easier.
So this is another field. So there's the regular Semichas chaver for Bottem, and now there's another thing about Kolol, which is for like a next level Semicha, you said?
Yeah. So essentially, as I was creating Semichas chaver Chabad, so we had requests from Chabad houses to create more beginner material, so that led to halacha U. That kind of in the other direction, on the more advanced level. Many of these Rabbeim of Semichas chaver were like, we're learning so much halacha, but I'm a default Rav in my small town, but we don't have a Rav in this small town here, Albany, or again, all these places essentially, 1,000, 2,000 shluchim live in communities they've been very successful in creating Balei Tshuva, but the community doesn't have a budget to hire a Rav. So I'm the Rav now, but I didn't have the formal training. I'm in so many areas. But I don't really have time to go back to Kolol for 5 years to become a Rav. So what do I do? So that's an issue that I was hearing about over and over from Rabonim. On the Rabonim side, Lubavitch has 10 or 15 Rabonim that essentially are not just the Rav, they're a small community in Chicago and Toronto and Melbourne, Australia. But suddenly there's now 2,000, 3,000 Chabad houses, which are essentially new communities that don't have a Rav. So I'm now becoming the Rav for so much more, and they're completely overwhelmed. These Rabbonim were getting 200-300 shilas a day, not paid, volunteered, and they're all burning out. So you had communities where you had people that had some basic smicha but didn't have any training or shmooze and rabbanos. The teaching Semichas chaver, they're like, I know I need more. And then the Rabbonim on the other side are getting burnt out by these hundreds and hundreds of shluchim that are, building communities that don't have a Rav, and they're taking the few Lubavitcher communities that have Rabbonim, and all those Rabbonim are getting burnt out, and they're all like, this is a crisis. So that led to starting Kolol Rabonei Chabad, which is a part-time virtual platform for people that are busy but are super interested in learning and growing in halacha over a 10-year period to either review sections of halacha or learn new sections of halacha, putting in about 10 hours a week to grow in becoming a basic community Rav with a lot of shmooze and learning and finding the balance between real learning and a practical schedule. And then having resources for people to deal with more challenging questions and having a good network.
Mm-hmm. Is Kolol something that Chabad started, or it's taken from outside?
Yeah, this is actually something very, very unique. So I started this together with Rabbi Raskin and Rabbi Tuvia Kasimov, and then eventually America's 302 got involved as a partner, and we actually have normally when it comes to areas of Taita, Lubavitch, has what to learn from other communities, but in this specific area, it's actually quite unique. To my knowledge, there's no such a program outside of Lubavitch where, someone leaves Kolol, or even once someone leaves Kolol, to have a continuous training to review the areas of Rabbonos. So we have a number of non-Lubavitchers that are signing up for this Kolol, as seeing this as an interesting way to do chaver or become a Rav once I, leave Kolol, and I see it as a unique opportunity to bring together different communities. But yeah,
Wow.
it's Kolol Rabonei Chabad. I mean, we use different resources. Again, it's the same Shulchan Aruch, but we're and some of the resources we use are adapting, similar to Semichas chaver, other review material and editing it for Lubavitchers. But this started in Lubavitch.
Mm-hmm. What are you? Is it it's obviously not something that you just had to. The beginning was very hard to set it up, and now it's on its own. You are for sure. You are probably doing this on a constant, like every day. You're something to do, no?
Yeah, this is I mean, between the different projects I'm involved with, it's full time. It's not, we're constantly trying to improve it and create better resources and tools for Rabonim and communities. So it's a platform for someone that wants serious learning, but primarily to train Rabonim for and shluchim that are not necessarily in your regular Toronto community where they have everything they need. I mean, take for example, one of the most in-your-face examples of training that you need a face-to-face exposure of shmooze is maris, being able to differentiate between the cloths, and that takes a good 2-3 years of intense shmooze and exposure, not just day by day, but you need a certain volume of seeing different colors, and you need continuous practice. So actually, with the help of a student, Reb Moshe Feinstein, who in Chicago, Shmuel first, so he told me that when he was training in the 70s to learn Maris, and he was moving to Chicago, which was at a very smaller community at that point. So Moshe Feinstein would send him. You would come in to New York once a month, do some training, but every week, or Moshe would send him an envelope numbered with Maris, and he would call him on the phone, and he would be able to see if he got it right or wrong. So we've created right now there's about 150 chaver Kolol in the Kolol Rabonei Chabad. So many of them are living in far off countries. So they come in for a couple of days to do a basic training, but over a 2-year period, we send out 2 envelopes every month, 15 Maris with numbers, and there's a whole team of people working on this, and then there's 2 Zoom calls per month to see the Maris. This is a Shliach could be in Siberia, and he's able to get community exposure that, like, as if you're living in Toronto.
Wow.
To see 30 Maris a month with speaking with the Rav. So this is, his Iker Shlichus is, doing whatever he does on his Shlichus, but this gives him an ability to become and have the resources to become a real Rav, and not just in Nida, but in all areas of halocha that a community Rav needs to know. Obviously, a paisik, someone that's sitting and learning halacha 40-50 hours a week, that's dealing with the more advanced questions, Choshen Mishpat and other, like, to be a real Rav in the Beis Yosefs and the Pri Megadims, with real shmooze, and that's what we're looking to offer. So essentially taking these Semichas chaver Rabbis, I'd say half of them joined the Kolol because this is what they needed to take it to the next level. Not all of them had the time or some of them didn't need it, but essentially it was for the Rebbes to take their learning to the next level. And once someone takes their learning to the next level, obviously the whole community can go to the next level.
Wow. So what about the feedback, both the positive and the opposite? What have you gotten so far?
Oh well, anything that goes wrong, that's what I deal with. I get all the problems and all the complaints from everything. So that's
I'd like to mention
what goes wrong? Everything goes wrong. Nothing goes right. And then you try to make it a little better. But
besides obviously like the technicalities, like very, very technical, more like not like, oh, it doesn't show up on my screen, it's not opening up the folder, like that's a very technical thing. But more not technical, you know what I mean? That you would like to share.
We got a lot of pushback from all the projects. You know, in the world, people are perfectionists, and Mashiach's not yet here. If you haven't gotten that memo, so there's a lot of imperfections, and I think that you have to find the balance between being able to deliver something that's going to make a really strong impact, even if it's not perfect. Not perfect in terms of the product, not perfect in terms of, you know, this Rav and that Rav trying to bring people together. He doesn't like him, he doesn't like her. You know, I like to tell people, you know, not everyone's perfect like Betzalel Bassman. You know, in other words, there's a lot of, so that was one. In all these projects, there's a lot of pushback of it's not good enough, and if you can't do it right, you can't do it. If you can't do it perfect, you can't do it. So finding the balance between dealing with basically everyone slamming your face, you know, when it comes to areas of halocha, you need to get it right. But at the same time, to be able to, you know, one of the things that a Rav has to learn, one of the things that a leader, and particularly in Rabbonos and shmooze, that you're taught after enough shmooze is okay. You make choices, you make decisions, and you make hard choices, which essentially involve, you know, rejecting certain ideas and not necessarily rejecting them in the long term, but okay, there's a lechatchila, there's a b'diavad, so being able to make choices between what's perfect and what's really good, and saying this is really good, let's get it moving. We can always make it better.
Right. You don't have anything specific that you would think would be a benefit for the public to hear? Example.
A lot of gossip. People are gonna, if you're gonna try to do something big, people are gonna say bad things, and you're gonna have to ignore a lot of things. I think it's important to surround yourself with people that believe in what you're doing. Have your asay l'charav, but if you're going to try to do anything that's going to make a difference in the world, you're going to have there's going to be people that are going to try to distract you.
Mhm.
and they're not always gonna, they can be some influential, strong people, and if you have the people that you're following and you feel you're doing the right thing, go ahead. Can't make everybody happy.
Right. I think
Can't make
it's
everybody.
worth mentioning Bashkacha Pratis. I read this yesterday, and I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about. I read a story of something about someone would complain to the Rebbe how newly Balachuvas could turn into I'm not sure specifically Rabbonim or Shluchim, something like that, similar. I mean, now Shluchim are kind of Rabbonim, so. And the Rebbe says, and he says the problem is because they're so new, they're probably going to teach something wrong, which is a problem. The Rebbe said, in the ideal perfect world, you would be right. Yeah, they probably will be teaching something wrong because they're so fresh. But now we're in a fire, and when there's a fire around, you don't look for the best person to put out the fire. Everyone who's able to carry water to put out the fire, please do. You don't make calculations. So I think that's what we're dealing with here. Correct me if I'm
Right.
wrong.
So that's
Correct?
100% true, but it's very important to find the right balance, because one of my the level I'm trying to raise the bar. When you're trying to raise, I'll tell you a mice with the Rebbe. So we were purists. It's very important to have purists and to have perfectionists to be able to balance out those that are lowering the bar. There's I'm very frustrated with some programs that are out there that are claiming to go through a certain course and you become a paisik and you become a high level of learning, which putting in 2-3 hours a week of learning, and very mediocre. I'm very much trying to raise the level of Rabonim and Lubavitch. And to become a Rav, you have to be someone that's shaku on learning. If you don't know, you have to become very good at saying you don't know. And the current state of Rabbanos and Lubavitch is can use there's a lot of room for improvement. So I'm an extreme proponent that much of the current system needs an overhaul, and we really need to raise the bar in a significant way. But at the same time, you could become a Rav even if you're not learning 40 hours a week for 10 years in Kolol. I'm trying to find the balance, but clearly what many people consider a Rav, what?
Can't we just say that there are different levels of Rabbonim? What's wrong with that? Like, everybody knows you can't compare Moshe Feinstein to someone like any other regular Rav,
Right, but there has to be, and again, this is just for simplicity's sake, there has to be a certain level of barrier. In Lubavitch, because everybody is a rabbi,
That's what they wanted.
we have what?
That's what the Rebbe wanted.
I understand. Because everybody's a rabbi, we need to be much more definitive in our definition of what a Rav is, because many more people are confused about what that means. So if you're not someone that's opening up a tour base Yosef every day, or at least 5 days a week, for an hour or two, like, you can't pasken a shayla. Meaning, if you're not chazering Hilchas Shabbos every 90 days, like, if you haven't opened up the sefer about this specific question in the last 3 to 6 months, don't answer the question until you look it up first. Meaning there has to be a certain bare minimum that we're creating for a basic Rav. This is Kolol Rabonei Chabad. We have many on our team that are advanced Rabbonim putting in 20, 30 hours a week. But to be a basic Rav, if you're not someone that's learning Pri Megadims and Beis Yosefs every single day, you're not a Rav. Period. So I try to make that very clear.
Where did that line come from? Like, it sounds, to someone who is not familiar, it sounds like you just threw it out from nowhere. Why do you say that specific Pri Megadim? Where did that come from?
So that's what shmooze is. Again, everyone will come up with their own exact definition. But if you're not someone that's in the sugyas, someone that's learning halacha from the sources down to practical application, and you're just someone that's opening up malaktim, and you're not constantly relearning sugyas of basic rabbanos, seeing the mechanics of the halacha, and you just know you're engineering from YouTube videos, you can't, don't fix my computer. Meaning, I'm just trying to give an analogy. So if you speak to some guy from coding, I'm sure they'd have similar analogies. I don't want you coding my software if you didn't do X, Y, and Z. So for halacha, at a bare minimum, I'm not saying you have to learn all the halacha this way, but the basic areas of kashrus, Shabbos, the Kiddushin, if you're not someone that's learning halacha from its sources down to the practical application, and along with that, in constant communication with senior paiskim on every single shaila and doing shmooze on some serious continuous level, so get out of it now, because there's gonna be karbanis. So that's my bare minimum, and that's kind of what Kolol Rabonei Chabad is doing, is exposure to serious paiskim, guys that are having that exposure to the best in the world on a continuous basis, and also you sit with your chaver, you're pashit, you're still in the learning. If you're not still in the learning, then you can't even be a basic Rav. That's what I've been taught. Again, I didn't make this up. This is what the senior Rabonim and the Kolol are. That's the message we're trying to get across.
So in other words, it sounds like you're saying that if someone's not doing that, he's not a Rav. So what are they? What type of smicha are they getting? It sounds like a joke.
So there's really, if I had to break it down, I'd say there's four basic categories of smicha. There's what smicha in Yera was, which was, if you go to Lakewood, you go to Bells, you go in Eretz Yisrael, you go to the Rabbanut. So there's basic smicha, and basic smicha is someone that's not planning to become a community Rav, but it's a certain title that you're going to be called Rabbi, you're going to be called Rav, and it's usually limited to areas of kashrus and maybe a little bit more. So it used to be when someone did Yera, it was.
What does it mean, Yera? What does that mean?
That's kind of, if you read the language of the certificate, it says this person is this person can now be a Yera, means to give,
teach,
to pasken. So it was so there was the basic smicha, and then someone that used to know smicha, I'd say 50 years ago, it meant more than it means today.
Why?
But just what the testers required of the Talmuds, the expectations were much higher, because the Rebbe essentially made smicha something where you become good at asking questions. That's essentially what smicha means. You're a knowledgeable shoyl. So I'd say that's level one, which smicha currently means. Some people that get smicha, if you get a YU smicha, or if you go to Lakewood and get smicha, it does mean you have more mastery of the sugyas, and I'd say potentially you can not just be a good shoyl, maybe you could even answer some questions. But those were the two. That was basic smicha, which was essentially more for the title, but in many cases, it did mean you were a serious Talmud. But the Rebbe emphasized people just to become a knowledgeable questionnaire. So that's what most shluchim have. They're Talmidei Chachamim, they're knowledgeable, but they didn't necessarily learn Basar B'cholav and Taruvis Be'ion, but they're familiar with the information and they can ask knowledgeable shilas and not barnat and so on and so forth. Shtei Kedetis and whatever you want, and Chana. They're familiar with the terminology and they're in the service. Then there's someone that becomes a community rav. You go to Lakewood, it would mean you learn Hilchas Nida, you learn Hilchas Shabbos, you learn Hilchas Erevin, Eretz Yisrael and Rabbanut, it would mean something else. That's someone that's learning Smicha plus other areas that a basic rav needs to know to be able to pasken shilos for your community, smaller communities, larger communities, medium-sized communities. So that's Yera, but like someone that's really going to become a rav. So it's Smicha plus usually a large section of Hilchas Shabbos, Erevin, Chubah v'Kiddushin, and maybe other such areas of halocha, Hilchas Yantif, and so on and so forth. But he's learning those halachas, but he's also doing shimush, and he's doing apprenticeship with Rabonim and how to apply those areas practically. So I'd say that's the third level of smicha, which is someone that does yera plus other practical areas that a community rav needs to know. You do it by the Rabbanut, it will be called Rav Ha'ir or whatever it was. There's different levels. There's a small town community rav, big town community rav. And then there's Yadun, which many in Lubavitch do also a crash version of Yadun, where they learn a couple simonim and Choshen Mishpat and they become a dayan, which again, it's similar to that first level where they familiar with the topics, but they're not going to sit on a bezdin. They're just familiar with the sugyas of dayanos. And then there's real Yadun, which is basically a guy getting tested with practical shimush that takes 15, 20 years. So that's beyond what Kolol Rabonei Chabad is doing. That's more like a senior paisik, someone that's spent his whole life sitting and learning. Then you're going to sit on a bezdin. That's I'd say real high level Yadun, and that is just the sky's the limit for where you can go there. So that third level, that community rav that in the sugyas has shimush is going to pasken shilos. That's where we're living in Kolol Rabonei Chabad for the most part.
Wow. So let me get this straight. The first level is like the Rebbe made it to just be knowledgeable and asking questions. And that's for yourself and to be called a rabbi. The second level is where you're a community rav and you're more learning.
The second level I didn't make so clear. Second level is what Semicha used to be, which was someone that was learning what we learned for Semicha, but spending more time doing that. Like in Lakewood, you'll spend a whole day learning Basar B'cholav and Taruvis, and you'll be more knowledgeable on that, but you don't necessarily include. It doesn't include the added areas, and it doesn't include shimush apprenticeship in how to actually pasken it. You more just know what it says in the Makairis, but you don't necessarily know how to apply that in the real world.
So you learn it more in depth. You don't have shimush. You don't learn other areas. And the third level is that you have those two things. And then maybe you're also familiar with a little bit of the
you expand areas beyond just kashrus. You go to Shabbos or the Chaim, some areas of Even Ezer that are more practical for a rav to know. Chubah v'Kiddushin.
That's the second level or third level?
Well, that's the third level. The second level plus, meaning you're learning basic everyday, more in depth. You're adding Hilchas Nida, Shabbos, Erevin, other sections of halacha, and also adding the shimush aspect.
Mm-hmm. And the fourth level is everything.
Basic level.
That was so important, and I'm just shocked and surprised they don't teach you this, because I've honestly wondered it, and I'm sure many did. I think it's very confused, especially it bothers me so much when people who are non-religious or call any Joe Schmo rabbi the same way they call Moshe Feinstein a rabbi. Like it's not the same rabbi. It's a busha, right?
Right.
It's like this, and yeah, I didn't even know. Like there's 4 levels. Maybe I would have said 3 levels. I don't know. I knew
I
there's.
mean, this is the way I see it in my head.
Yeah.
The system hasn't been that formalized, but in most communities, there's essentially, it's 3 levels probably. There's the proper learning, and then there's, fuller learning with shimush, and then someone dedicating his life to halacha
Right.
full time.
I like how you did it. You did an extra level that it does. It also gives each Rav their proper respect that they deserve, that the amount of time and effort they put into it, and that's really clarity when you have proper.
But I'll tell you a story. This is where this was started off when we were. There's a Balchuv yeshiva in Crown Heights called Hadar Torah. So one of their Magidei Shir wanted to teach Semichas chaver in Hadar Torah, and he spoke to the Hanhola, and they basically decided not to do it, even though Semichas chaver is not rabbinical ordination. It's not even level 1. It's just a certificate of accomplishment of knowledge. That's actually an interesting chaver. Chaver is a term in the Mishnah, which means you're a knowledgeable balabas. But the Hanhal of Hadar Torah decided not to do it because they had the Hechs were the ones that were involved in Hadar Torah, Rabbi JJ Hecht. So when the Rebbe was encouraging everyone to get smicha, so they wanted to create a beginner's version of smicha for Balei Tshuva. Some a little more. I don't know exactly what was included in the curriculum, and what came out from the conversations with the Rebbe and consulting with other Rabonim was that the Rebbe did not approve of a watered down smicha. So I'm not sure even some of the current smicha programs that exist today, if at least in the opinion of what this group received from the Rebbe, the way I put it to some people is, if you can't learn a taisvis, you can't get smicha. Meaning, if you're learning smicha in English, it's essentially you spent 20 years of your life learning on a high level, so we're going to give you now smicha because you're someone that learned 10, 12 Masechtas in Shas with Rishonim, and you spent a year learning Beis Yosef and Torah, so you're a Talmud Chacham. But if you're someone that can't read a Shach and a Prima Godim, and it's all in English, that's not what this is about.
Mm-hmm. So where was the Rebbe's bar? Because now you're showing 2 sides of the Rebbe, so to say. On the one hand, you just did a story of the Rebbe where he doesn't want it to be watered down. But on the other hand, I never saw a source for this, but something like they always say, the Rebbe wanted everyone to get every Chabad to get person to get smicha. Like, where's the bar? Where?
I'm not the person to make bars. I can just tell stories. But I know I have a strong feeling the bar is higher than where it is in certain smicha programs. I know, for example, Rabbi Levi Weinberg in Australia, in South Africa, he's the only head of a smicha program. I don't know if his smicha program is still in existence, but he failed people in his smicha program. So if in your smicha program everyone passes, it's probably a problem. But I don't know. I mean, this is something for I'm not saying it's an easy question, but I guess I'm here to push the.
I guess, yeah, when it comes to Tar Shabbat Peh, which I think this is, right? It's like not just like one rabbi can say also, one rabbi can say mutter. So one rabbi can say this is an okay smicha, one rabbi can say this is not an okay smicha. Is that the same? Is that a fair comparison?
Again, I'm not here. There's a whole machlokes about asela mihu Yehudi, mihu Rav. I don't know. I'm less concerned about who gets smicha and who gets rabbanos. If there's a program out there that gives people the title rabbanos, and it doesn't include someone that's committing for his rest of his life to be continuing to chazer the sugyas. In other words, a rav can't be something of the past. A rav has to be something which is an active learner. You know, I don't know what the original source for this vart is, but why is a scholar in Torah called a Talmud Chacham? Because you're constantly a Talmud. If you're not continuing to be actively involved, like I said, my example was if you're not someone that 5 out of 7 days a week you open up a Tur Beis Yosef and learning paskening from the original sources, even if it's an hour or two a day, in my opinion, when I was makabel, you should get out of the rov business. If you're not someone that's in the sugyas on some serious level and in constant contact with someone that's doing shimush, you need to retire. So again, I'm more concerned about who gets the title Rav and who gets the title Rabbi. But I think even in the title Rabbi, the Rebbe did not necessarily include, everyone that's going through a Semicha course these days. That's not someone that's, really schwitzing in his learning, or again, the whatever. I don't know what the bar should be, but it seems like we shouldn't be scared to raise the bar and make it and it should be hard. It should be very hard. I mean, it's similar with Semichas chaver. Zalman Nechemi Goldberg was the helped Rabbi Goldwich decide, what should a Semichas chaver test be. So the Bottem should have to work really hard to pass the test. They should need to spend 10, 20 hours reviewing the material. It shouldn't be they came to 15 classes and they can pass the test. It has to be that they work hard. So you have to schwitz. And it happens to be, we're talking about comparing Semichas chaver to Semicha. One of the chesroinus of having Semicha programs that are too watered down is that you can really turn people off from halocha. If many people that I've spoken to, if the Semicha program is not deep enough, you don't go deep enough into the background information, and at the same time, you don't discuss the practical side, you could turn them off from both sides because the learning is less engaging, and you don't see how it translates practically. So if that's your introduction to halacha, you can, it can be a turnoff. Even putting aside Semicha, just Talmud Torah, if the Semicha program doesn't, if the main geschmack of the whole learning is just to get the certificate, and the learning's not super interesting, and you don't see how the halacha translates down all the way to the practical, you can take very talented young galite or Bottem that otherwise would have been perfect candidates to becoming Rabonim maybe one day, and you turn them off from halacha because their introduction to halacha is some crash course and whatever it is, Hanan, and it's too quick and it's not practical enough. So many people see Semichas chaver as because there's such a strong focus on the practical. When Semichas chaver did the halachas of Basar B'cholov, people that even went to advanced Semicha programs like Category 2, even Sirius, Lakewood, YU, Semichas, if you don't focus enough on the practical application, they said they knew Hilchas Basar B'cholov after going to Semichas chaver better than their advanced Semicha, because on the practical side.
Right. So the Semichas chaver is both more practical and more enjoyable.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to say Semichas chaver are bonus or Semicha, but the limud itself.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask you. Why isn't it an official certificate? Rabbanus.
So
what is it? What's the point?
So essentially, after this conversation, anyone that went through, you're not learning the Gemara Tur Beis Yosef. You get like the general picture, but you're not going through the sugyas and the rishonim. It's more you get a serious taste of the background, but you're not kvetching a Beis Yosef. You get the structure of the sugya, but it's a weekly shear. What could you do in an hour and 15 minutes once a week? You're taking the sugya. That therein lies the difference. Someone that's a Rav spends his time learning Torah Beis Yosef, the most abstract aspects of the sugya, to be able to pasken a shaila. Someone that's learning Semichas chaver is focusing on just the bottom line of the background, and okay, I gotta get to bed at 9:30. So it's a different world.
Mm-hmm. So in order to, I tried to really get it. What, and still, to be honest, I feel like it's still, you can't even put your finger on it and what exactly defines, that's it. You deserve the title Rav. You got it now. Someone who's
title Rav is someone that learns Gemara, Torah, Beis Yosef, and you're tracing the halacha back to its original source, and you live in that world. If you don't live in that world, you can't come to a class and be a Rav. A Rav is someone that lives in the world of Ravina and Rav Ashi and the Ramban and the Rambam.
How does the teacher know that he reached that level?
You never reach that level, but you aspire to reaching that level.
Okay.
Your goal is, if you ever think you reach that level, then you're in the wrong business. But you're comfortable in that world, and you want to be in that world, and you're shooting for the stars. Meaning you're shooting to your goal is to know the whole Hilchas Nida with every Taz and Shach. It could be I'm going to be 120 when I get there, but for the rest of my life, I'm chazering Hilchas Shabbos with every Magen Avraham and Taz and Pnei Megadim. And I'm never going to get there. But your goal is to have the full picture. And your goal is to live in the world of the original sources, and to live in the world of people that are, you aspire to being a Rabbi Feinstein, even though you know you're never going to be there.
So it sounds like you're saying, so the one very important element is that you aspire to be the Reb Moshe Feinstein, the greatest, even though you'll never get there.
You know that you know what it takes to pasken a shaila. You realize the enormity of the background. If you need intense, extreme, continuous exposure to the enormity of what's involved in paskening a shaila, and you know what you know, and you know what you don't know. And if you're not in that world of the original sources, then you're not in the business of Rabbonis.
So it's, according to what you're saying, it sounds like that from the first day, if I show I'm really serious about it, then I should get the title Rav. That's what it sounds like you're saying, but obviously not, because there's more to it, no?
Obviously had to have been through the sugyas. You had to have been through enough topics and spent enough years in Shimush. And once the Rav that you're apprenticing with says, you know what, you could paskin that shaila, or I'm confident that you're not going to make too many mistakes, or every time, you get permission. That's what that's what a Rav is, someone that says, he got permission from his teacher to paskin in this area.
Mm-hmm.
That person knows you well and knows you live in the world of shittus, and he's comfortable with you now passing on the torch.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be in some specific area. You can be a Rav in Hilchas Tevilas Kalim, and because at least you understand the sugya to know what you know and to know what you don't know well. Part of being a Rav is to know really well what you don't know. so it's essentially it's more to know when to say I don't know, and to know very deeply as you could what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. So it's both to aspire and to know some basics, and to it's an everlasting thing. I want to ask you a little off topic, but it's the same idea, but a little off topic. A lot of people have this question. A lot of mainly non-religious people. How could it be? How could it be that you have two paskening, like the highest, I'll say the highest level Rabbonim, saying two exact opposites, and they're both. It's not like Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, so you go according to Beis Hillel. They're someone lives in Israel, they go according to that Rav, and someone in Chutz La'aretz goes according to the other big Rav. They're both, let's say, equal big Rabbonim, and in Israel they're doing like him, and in Chutz La'aretz they're doing like him. Like, how can you have that in Torah? How does that make sense? They're both people are literally living their lives that way. So, because in other words, what people say is that what it comes out to be, you can have Jews doing two different Torahs. That's what it seems to be. Like, someone could be eating on Yom Kippur, someone won't be eating on Yom Kippur, because that's too, that extreme.
So, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, and everything has layers to it, and everything has layers to it. The same way you can have two doctors that have two perspectives about how to advise a patient about some serious issue. And one's advising the patient a remedy that would, heal him from the perspective of one organ. And one's taking the approach of healing from the other organ. Now, we're going to say that if you approach it with fear of God and based on the way the sources are supposed to be interpreted, and he feels this is the way to go, and he feels that way to go, the two doctors are not going to say the other doctor's wrong. They're just going to say, my perspective is that this takes precedence, and my perspective that takes precedence, and they're probably both going to be right. And and divinely for their communities, that's the best advice for that person, because that's the way Torah guides you to find a God-fearing Rav that's going to guide you based on what he feels is right for you. And for this person, it's best to follow the advice based on the perspective of his kidney, and for this person, it's best to follow the advice based on the perspective of his brain. But they're not wrong, and the doctors will agree with each other, and likely, if they saw the perspective of that specific person, maybe they would agree in those cases. So if you read two different tshuvas, and this Rav says, and Minchas Yitzchak says like this, and Rabbi Feinstein says like that, possibly if that specific question was brought to Rav Moshe, he would say the same thing. Not necessarily, but that Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim means that there's perspectives, and both perspectives are right.
Mm-hmm. And it's on the topic similar to it, like a follow up. There's this concept of you're not. I don't know if I heard different mixed things. So what's the deal with rabbi hopping? Is that allowed? Like, what's up with that?
So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch talks about this clearly based on the Simonim and Yeridea, that once you find your Rav and he gives you a psak, you have to follow his psak. And if you go to another Rav, you have to tell him that you're going to ask a second Rav a shayla. You have to say, I spoke to Rav X and he told me this, and he could then,
Why does that make a difference? Why does it make a difference? Why does it make a difference that he spoke to another Rav?
We have a system, and once a psak was made, I mean, again, from a very this is just the Shulchan Aruch guiding you to be a practical yid. So first of all, for communities to survive, we have to have a hierarchy. You can't just free for all. But if you feel you can challenge your Rav respectfully by going to someone more knowledgeable and getting a second opinion. But when you approach that second Rav with a second opinion, you have to share the information that the first Rav gave you.
I guess
Because again, he's your personal Rav, so maybe he knows you best, and that Rav has to take into consideration the research that has been done, and he can say, the first Rav made a mistake, and mistakes happen. There's a whole Masechta Mishnayos about Rabonim, Sanhedrin's making mistakes, but it has to be done within the system. You can't break the system.
right.
Part of the system is respecting the local research and taking it to someone that has more expertise, and he can take that into consideration, discuss it with the previous Rav, and if it's just some sort of preference the second Rav has, he'll have to defer to the first Rav because he didn't make a mistake, even if his opinion is somewhat different. But if there's an actual mistake, then that has to be dealt with respectfully.
Okay, so now that the second Rav knows that this guy spoke to the first Rav, like how will his verdict be different? How will his psak be different?
Very, very carefully, because the system of Rabbanus is at the core of a kehillah, and if we need to be very careful the way that we it's showing deference to a local community Rav, and if you were to poke fun or to even wrinkle your face the wrong way, you can mess up this guy for life, because this is the Rav of his community. You have to see the bigger picture here. This is his leader, and leaders have to be built. So big Rabonim have to build smaller Rabonim. And if we're not going to respect our Rabonim, if a community wants a Rav, they get the Rav they deserve, in the sense that a Rav has to be built up. And the more you build up your Rav, the better Rav will be. So if you treat your Rav like just another website that you're searching for, then that's the Rav you're going to get. You want to build a Rav that has strength and has the ability and the inspiration and the chayas to want to continue to lead your community. Community has to make the Rav. I think very much a kehillah has to build the Rav as much as the Rav has to build the kehillah. It's a two-way relationship. And if you want to all day complain about your Rav, and you're partly at fault for not helping him grow as a Rav. You have a Rav in his 20s and 30s and 40s, he's continuously growing, and as the community grows, they'll grow with him. But if the community is not going to invest in the Rav, they're not going to pay the Rav properly, they're not going to treat the Rav properly, they're going to expect the Rav at 30 to know everything that a Rav at 60 knows, you're never going to have a Rav. So it's a partnership.
Mm-hmm. So
communities also need to invest in the Rabbanim's growth. I think very much a part of a community's, and this is part of Kolol Rabonei Chabad. There's a number of communities that are paying for the Rabbanim to be part of the Kolol, because they see continuous learning and growth as part of the growth of the Rav. If a Rav a whole day, he has to have 5 jobs to be able to be a Rav, and he has no time to learn, then he's not going to be able to be a Rav. He's not going to be able to be a good Rav. If you want to have a chaver Rav, the more time the community can invest in the Rav, in his personal growth, in his learning, and everything, the better product the community will have. If you make the Rav your janitor, and your teacher, and your schlepper, and you're selling ice cream, and then having 3 Amazon businesses, and he also has to be a Rav, then that's the kind of Rav you're going to have.
You're touching upon a topic that I really want to speak about. I just hope we have enough time for it. But I didn't fully finish even this topic, but I guess, okay, we'll swear off a little bit. What happened? This is more also controversial, a little sensitive, but but I find it necessary, and it's not to bash, but what has gone wrong? And I feel like it's in general with, there's a funny comedian that made a difference between Chabad Rabbonim, not Chabad, Ashkenazic Rabbonim and Sephardic Rabbonim. But I would say even within Ashkenazic, even within Chabad, there's this culture that I think it's because like the Rebbe made it like there's the Rebbe and then everyone else is equal, but that's not right. Like, what do you have to say about that?
I think that's why Mashiach's not here yet. I think that was essentially the call of the Rebbe. That we need to become a community that can function with a regular Rav community relationship, and be able to do that without the Rebbe being our babysitter. In other words, the Rebbe basically said that I babysat you for 40 years. Now you guys are big boys. Let me see what you guys can do on your own. Part of becoming big boys is being able to create leaders, to create leaders, and in the world of before Gimel Tammuz, it was very hard to create real personalities and real leaders and mashpiyim and Rabonim, because the Rebbe is just everything. So the Rebbe created a void, I think, based on reading the Semichas and what I'm taught, for us to actually create Rabbonim and Mashpiyim that will not become new Rebbes, but become Rabbonim and Mashpiyim the way the Rebbe wanted it to see, the way the Rebbe wanted it to be. And I think we're getting better and better at that. And that's the area of growth which Lubavitch is maturing into post Gimel Tammuz, which was an area that we barely flexed our muscles at for 40 years because the Rebbe was just larger than life. And now that Lubavitcher communities are something that are happening, where we're learning how to do the community thing. We don't have a lot of, within Lubavitch, we don't have a lot of experience and know-how about how to do this. We can look at other communities, but really, the Rebbe was doing everything before Gimel Tammuz. He didn't want that, but that's just the way it was. And now the Rebbe's, I think waiting for us, and we're doing a good job at. We're getting better at it, but I think this is a big part of it.
Baruch Hashem. Okay, glad to hear that. That makes sense. So now, we'll going back to what we were talking about before about rabbi hopping. So, just to clarify, what you were saying is that when a person goes to a second Rav, he has to tell the second Rav in order that the second Rav respect the first Rav. Is that what you're saying? Keep the dignity of the first Rav?
Yeah, that's what Shulchan Aruch says. Why the Shulchan Aruch tells us that? Okay, we can look into the sources, but look in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It's a chapter about asking Shiloh to Rabbonim based on a Siman and Yeridei, and the Reish is over there. When you ask a Shiloh to a Rav, there's a way it's done. That's the way it's done. Why is it done like that? Because that's what the Shulchan Aruch says.
Right. Okay.
I'm speculating again. I'm not in the sugya now, and I'm speculating that it makes sense that's the way Kehillah has to work, and the local Rav has, even if he's not as knowledgeable, he has certain information and data that the senior Rav's not going to know, and a big part of what the training Kolol Rabonei Chabad is not just the knowledge. We bring in Rabbonim to speak about the bedside manner of a Rav, and how to deal with people and emotional struggles and psychological struggles. That's a huge big part of it. But again, so the local Rav will have that know-how, oftentimes even better than the guy that knows every shach and tas. He's just he understands people better. So having that local data is crucial.
Right.
Apologize, I'm gonna have to run now. We can schedule to talk further if you'd like. Yashikaya.
Close off. Is there a message you want to share? Just like a general message you would like as the last message to say?
Last message there.
Something encouraging, call to action.
I guess there's two programs. I would encourage people to always continue growing, because life is about growing. And I think that the bottom line message of what I've learned from all the different programs that I'm involved with, Semichas, chaver, halocha university, Kolol Rabonei Chabad. We didn't speak about Kolol Rabonei, which is you can check out kololdach.com. Essentially, serious growth is something that can be done even after you leave yeshiva. So I would encourage people to invest in themselves, benefesh, beruach, chassidus, and nigla, and I think that's the best. I think that can really be a key to chinuch problems that people are having, shalom bias problems that people are having, emotional problems that people are having. Essentially, they'll believe that you can continue growing, and our nefesh Bahamas gets bigger, our nefesh Lakis has to get bigger also. Many people, unfortunately, when they leave yeshiva at 18, 19, people are leaving yeshiva pretty early these days. They say it's over. But if you say, you know what, I can grow till I'm 120, there's just a lot to dream of, and keep dreaming, because the neshama, that's all the neshama does all day. It dreams about these huge things. And if we live in this little klein keppeldige guf, the neshama gets bored very easily. And I think a big part of the frustration that people have, and the anxieties and the frustrations, is that we're not the growth level of what our nefesh wants to be doing, and the potential that we have could be stunted.
Wow, it's a great message. I hope that people take it to heart and bring it to action, and then eventually brings Mashiach. Thank you, Reb Betzalel, for your time, and maybe we'll make our part 2. No pressure. Baruch Hashem, we finally made it this time, and l'chaim.
Fine. Hatzlacha Rabba, and we're preparing for Shavuos. These are the days of growth, and you learn Hilchas Sfidas Aimer. You get a lot of hope. There's lots of second chances. You're not making a bracha every day. You can always get back up again, and there will be many times you're going to fall flat on your face. But there's another day of Sfidas Aimer. Get back up and dust off your pants and help another person.
Amazing.
Okay, cool.
Much. Sei gesund.